Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Carnegie Mellon University in Qatar. My name is Dudley Reynolds. I am the Senior Associate Dean for Education. Dean Michael Trick is at our Carnegie Mellon campus in Pittsburgh this week, and he sends along his special wishes and regrets that he's unable to be with us. A special welcome to all in attendance. And in particular, I'd like to welcome Secretary General of the Qatar Research and Development Institute, Engineer Omar Al-Ansari. We're very happy that you could be with us today. And we're especially happy to introduce today's speakers for our Dean's panel, who are the co-founders of the startup Stellic, Sabih Benwassi, Rukhsar Nayaz, and Musab Popatia, all of whom are graduates in computer science from Carnegie Mellon University in Qatar in 2015 and 2016. They have maintained close ties with our campus in the decades since they graduated. And just as an aside, my memory of them goes back to 2011 when they were first-year students sitting in my class. And it's wonderful to see all that they've achieved. While they were students here, they observed a need for something in our campus, and that was a better tool for degree planning. This tool kind of became an idea, and then the idea became a class project. When they graduated, that class project became a startup. And now, 10 years later, that is a tool which every Carnegie Mellon student and the majority of the faculty work with multiple times every week. That tool is Stellic. Stellic is now based in Silicon Valley. It is used in universities around the world, not just Carnegie Mellon. In 2022, the team raised $11 million in Series A funding, and they were also awarded a grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to find new approaches to close opportunity gaps for Black, Latino, and Indigenous students. Last year, they were each named as 2024 Tartans on the Rise, Carnegie Mellon's list of new graduates who are making a significant impact in their communities. Our discussion today will be moderated by Professor Maher Hakim from our Business Administration program, who has known this team since their CMU-Q days. Please join me in welcoming Maher, Sabih, Rukhsar, and Musab to our stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. Delighted to have our guests today. But before we start our panel, I want to share a story with you. About a month ago, maybe actually less than a month ago, right before Christmas, I received a text from Sabih. He sent it to all the board members. They had just signed a 7-figure deal, multi-year contract with New York University. 40,000 students. That was so. And since I was on holiday, I wanted to sit and reflect. So I had 3 thoughts on my mind that I want to share with you today. First one is, what an amazing example of the growing mindset. Those guys 10 years ago, when they started like everyone else here as a student, with eagerness, passion for learning. And they exemplified the growth mindset every step of the way. In fact, I probably would not find a better example that embodies the growth mindset than these 3 things that are sitting here. In probably less than a decade, they have turned me from a mentor to a mentee. And I don't say that lightly. I'm a 60-year-old almost, I'm very proud of my knowledge and expertise and skills. But the fact that within 10 years, 3 students will turn from people I teach to people who teach me every single day was a great example of the growth mindset. So this is an extraordinary team. I'm very proud to have had them in my classroom and to actually be helping with them build a company. So thank you, guys. The second thought I want to have with you, share with you, is it really takes a village. It's true that the students, Sabih, Musab, and Rukhsar, were computer science students. But they took classes in the information system departments that was focused on tech entrepreneurship. They joined the entrepreneurship center that was set up by the business administration program. All 3 programs, at the time, biology program was just starting, so they didn't really get much help from that. But all those 3 programs really helped shape the education that they had that enabled them to be what they are today. And after they graduated, we'll talk about that also in a little bit, several organizations and institutes in Qatar helped them really launch their company. So, and then, obviously in the Silicon Valley, they're getting a lot of helps from accelerators, incubators, from venture capitalists, from clients. So it really takes a village to build a success story like this. And, a success has many owners, obviously. And the third thing I want to share with you, since I was a seed investor in this company, and I have now a 4-year-old girl, I'm proud and happy to say that I think the college fund for my girl is now secured. So thank you, guys. So welcome again. Great to have you. So we're going to start the panel discussion now. Okay, so obviously I'm going to start by asking you about Stellic, the company, right? So the company, not the product. Why did you build Stellic, and what is your vision behind it?
I'll go, I guess. Well, first of all, it's 10 years since we graduated from here, so it's awesome to be back. And this is where we build the product, on that couches. So being back here is really awesome, a really good feeling and nostalgic feeling to be here. I think there were 2 pieces coming together. When we started our Carnegie Mellon journey, I remember one class where one of our professors made this comment that, do you realize the acceptance rate of Carnegie Mellon? Right? It's very small. And then if you multiply that with the acceptance rate of all the other places I have been, high school and all these different places, so it's you got to be here through a very small likelihood that you are sitting here. And the question, and most likely you will all have a really good quality of life, right? That's what Carnegie Mellon will give you. The question is that the fact that you are sitting here is a privilege. What are you going to do with that privilege? This was a simple sentence in a lecture in the first year, in freshman year course. And it really hit me to think about, what would I do with my life? I don't want to just live this 9-to-5 approach. I want to give back. I want to do something that transforms people's lives. So this was always in my back of my mind, before Stellic or anything like that, thinking about what can we do that make a transformative impact in people's lives. One of those lives is myself. Right? Going as a student, the experience of a student figuring out the decisions they have to make in the 4 years are sometimes have a lifelong impact on a student. Positive or not positive, right? You can take one elective, and that elective opens up your mind about an area that you hadn't even thought about, and you now pursue it as your career. Or you can miss an important class and not realize it until your last year, and suddenly you cannot get the job because you don't have a degree. Right? So it can have a very deep impact on people's lives. And so we thought, I can't be risking that on my own judgment. I want to build a platform where I could visualize the decisions and help me understand that. So that really is where this came together, and so we thought. So I think those two things came together. It felt like if we can build the right kind of tool, it has the potential of having a transformative impact on people's lives, and it was something that I could relate to myself, and so that's how the idea came together. I had no idea what I was signing up for, right? I would imagine, like most students here, my imagination of a startup is like Apple and Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg, like what you see in movies and like read in books. I actually think startups are very, very different than that. That you don't, you see a fantasized version of a startup, not like a real thing. But because the North Star was always mission-driven, it fueled us to go through that journey. I would say, like, if you had asked me as a senior, do you see yourself sitting here 10 years from now where you have built this enterprise SaaS solution that a university pays $1 million to buy? I would have said, no way, that's not exciting. I don't want to build something that is very enterprisey. But it just so happened that everything clicked together. So the problems that students were facing, when we talked to our advisors, they had the same view of the problem. When we talked to the registrar office or the provost office, they had a different perspective of the same thing. So, I mean, frankly, half of it is just luck. We stumbled upon a problem that was very personal to us, but it also had a business impact on different offices. So we accidentally built an enterprise SaaS company, is how I think about it. And I guess that's, our vision still remains the same what it was when we were students, which is keep building platforms, keep building technologies that could help make students, like, make better decisions. And as long as that's true, it will be exciting to keep working on that. So that's the vision.
Musab and Rukhsar, why did you decide to join him on this journey?
So the honest answer would be, like, it's not because of the mission. I primarily joined because I was, like, extremely into entrepreneurship. Like, I had made up my mind that I will not, like, take a job, to the point where when I graduated, I did not have a job, nor did I have a entrepreneurship thing. Like, I did not have a project to work on. I was, like, effectively jobless, thinking about an idea for, like, maybe 3 months, and just, like, roaming around in CMU with 2 or 3 other CMU grads. So that was the main reason. I was like, okay, I must do something, and it has to be big. Like, the other thing that I really cared about was, like, the scale has to be substantial. At some point, I think when I started, Sabi gave me the title of, like, scalability lead, which probably doesn't mean much. But yeah, the main thing was, like, I wanted to do an actual startup that would be big enough. I did not want to do something that would just be a localized version of something that was done in a bigger market. And then Stellic seemed like unique, novel. I obviously liked both Sabi and Rukhsar, like, as friends. And it was just, like, the right timing. And then that's why I basically, like, went on this journey of, like, doing a startup. So it was very much about, like, building something. I cared less about what it was and more about, like, how big it could be and who I was doing it with.
Rukhsar.
Yeah. So I don't know if most of you know, but me and Sabi are married. So, and we started dating in Carnegie Mellon. So while we were dating, Sabi told me that this is a project I'm thinking about and working on, and I told him that how frustrated
a great
I
dating
was.
topic.
Yes, we're still dating. So I told him, like, how frustrated because I came from an Indian system and an Indian school of education. Like, everything is, like, spoon-fed. Like, the teachers tell you exactly what to do. They kind of lay out a plan for you, and you just got to follow it, right? So when I came to U.S. higher education, I was like, what is this? Like, I have to make decisions for myself, and, like, my opinions matter. So it was, like, very, like, life-transforming experience for me. But during that, in my second year, like, I was going through a lot of confusion, anxiety of, like, will I graduate or not? Like, I don't know how to make these life decisions. And I think that's when I was like, yes, let me build this with you, because this is selfishly going to help me figure out that path to make sure that I graduate on time. And I actually, after graduation, took a job because it's so ingrained in me that I have to take a job. That's kind of stability. And doing that job for about 10 months made me realize that I don't want to do, like, a traditional job, kind of confined in the traditional job structure. So that's when I left the job and then kind of started working on Stellic full time. So, yeah.
Very good. So you guys, last time we were together on a panel, if you remember, it was 8 years ago. We were at QSTP. And that was right before you moved to San Francisco to join Alchemist Accelerator there. So my question to each of you in the past, if you look back at the past 8 years, what are the things that you think you have learned the most? And what kind of growth have you had over the past 8 years while you're living in a different culture and different environment, doing something that is completely different than what you were doing here before?
I guess go first. Probably the biggest thing for me being in the Bay Area is believing that you can do something that is world class. I think when I was here, I'm pushed based on what I can see, what I can experience in my environment, and try to thrive in that environment. But once you are in the Bay Area, you are doing the same thing, but the bar has raised quite a bit, right? I remember, literally, this was a week 1 of being in Bay Area. They were doing this orientation as part of our accelerator program, and they had this exercise where they would have this, what's called hopscotch, the rope thing, and the idea was you have to figure out minimize the number of iterations you have to do for the whole team to go from one place to another place, right? And we had we were 50 people. So people were thinking, okay, we both can stand together, so it will be 25 hopses, and we can do 4. While it's coming back, somebody can come from here. So we were thinking about incremental approach. And I remember one person said, what if we do it in 1? Which was not a thought process, a possibility I had even thought through. And they had an idea which was, most of it was dumb. But the question itself made you think, maybe now I want to start from 1 and go to 2 and 3, not go from 50 to 25, right? That mindset, I think, is absolutely there in Bay Area. You're constantly thinking about, I'm doing this, how is that going to be the best in the world? How can it be 10x better than anything else that exists? So instead of thinking about, how to help a couple of universities, our mindset became, how do we transform higher ed? Right? So I think for me, that was the biggest learning, is just pushing yourself to be thinking that you can build breakthrough things. We have it in us to do that. So for me, I think that was one thing. The other one I would say is there's different flavors of success, which again gets very glamorized and fantasized if you are not in the heart of the action. So for example, I'll give a good example of that. Fundraising is a metric that many people consider as oh, this company raised 10 million, 50 million, 100 million as a very key metric. Or here's how much money we have burned, and we'll raise another round, it'll burn more money. But when you hang out with people there, you see there's all flavors of success that you can develop. And you find what is right for you as a business to build that, right? So the flavor that made sense for us was different than what I grew up with, thinking that is what you want to look for. Right? So just expecting that there's a lot more diversity than just one monotonous way of thinking about that, and thinking big, I would say, are the two things that I took away being there for close to a decade now at this point. In terms of personal growth, what I thought I'll do is I'll share for others, and they can share mine, what growth they have seen in me. Maybe I'll share with Rukhsar, since I get to spend more time with her. I think one thing that I've seen, especially in the last 10 years, is it's easy when you graduate to lose yourself because you look at somebody else and say, I want to be that person, right? Whoever that person is, versus finding your own flavor of that. So Rukhsar has to talk to presidents and provosts of some of the world's biggest universities, but she doesn't come across as another vendor talking to that. She still carries that warmth and student persona in capturing that, while still having the gravitas and credibility of a company that you can give student data to. You can trust that system. So I think that is the biggest growth I have seen in Rukhsar. I have learned a lot from her in that as well. She can go in a room, command the room with warmth, which I didn't know was possible. These two things sound counterintuitive, but I think she does it really well. So that's one thing I would say for Rukhsar. You can go next, I guess.
Yeah, so learning from Silicon Valley. I think one of the things I was reflecting on, Maher, it's been 8-10 years, right? And we're doing this. And I think looking at other startups in the Bay Area and looking at us kind of continuing to do this at our year 8 and year 10 mark, I think the biggest thing driving me personally forward is the impact. Getting to talk to students and seeing kind of what kind of impact we are making. And that's a thing I have noticed in a lot of other startups which are continuing to move forward is because their impact is pretty high. So I think one of the things I learned, and as I kind of talk to other people who are aspiring entrepreneurs, is that if you want to do a startup, find a problem you really, really, really are passionate about. And it solves a problem which really, really, really touches your heart. That because there's going to be a lot of ups and downs, and during those downs, those moments of impact is going to keep pushing you to move forward, right? And I think that's what keeps us grounded, honestly, after being through this journey, wants us to keep going forward, to kind of keep making that impact. So, yeah.
And how have you seen Musab grow over the past?
So I think one of the big ways I have seen Musab kind of grow personally is the skill set of like being vulnerable. I think as a leader, especially like when you just graduate from college and you're doing a startup, there's a lot of leadership skill sets which you have to acquire and learn as you go on, right? And from the time kind of Musab joined, he was very reserved and shy. And as he moved to Pakistan and built his own team, I think he has really grown to be more and more vulnerable, kind of like sharing how he feels and how the team is feeling. And that's something which I think I have also seen both me and Sabi learn and pick up from Musab. So, yeah.
And Musab?
So, for Silicon Valley, I think the biggest learning, so generally speaking, I am not super self-regulated or very disciplined about things, but I do have a decent amount of drive to do something meaningful, right? So the way I hack it is by changing the environment. Like I basically create fake deadlines or like, create external pressure. And Silicon Valley is like an amazing place to do that because like effectively, you will always find people who are significantly better at it. A company that is like, absolutely crushing it from every metric that you could potentially look at. And like, it's this very unique place that like, not only gives you like a North Star that you can work towards at any given point. So it's not like you will always look at like, I want to become Google, right? Like you look at the next closest startup and then you work your way up there. So I think like that's probably the biggest thing about like Silicon Valley, like the density of like what is possible is just extremely, extremely high there. So throwing yourself into it effectively increases your likelihood of like doing something similar, if not like the exact like top best thing. So I think, yeah, that's probably the main thing. They are obviously still like very nice people in terms of like network and all. Like most people in Silicon Valley, we have been very fortunate, like have not only shared like, actual cash when we were starting out, just like as angel investments, but a lot of our new networks were built by people just trying to do the right thing and not necessarily expecting anything in return. So it's like this incredibly like selfless space, but somehow also like pushes you quite aggressively in all aspects. So I think, yeah, that's probably the best part I like about Silicon Valley. In terms of things I think Sabi has grown in, so I think very quickly, Sabi developed this ability to be able to provide meaningful feedback regardless of the problem space. And this is a very useful skill for a CEO, right? Like you have like sales, marketing, product engineering, like things that we did not consider as like domains within the business effectively became domains. And his like ability to walk into a room, in a lot of cases unprepared, and still make like actually having an impact in that like 10, 20, 30-minute conversation with something meaningful has got like significantly better over time. And what has actually improved a lot is like initially used to be like brutal. Like, just like very aggressive, like direct feedback. It was just like shake you to your core. And some people obviously like, Rukhsar and I got pretty good at like just getting the useful information out. But I think in the last year or so, after a lot of effort, I don't think it happened naturally. But Sabi's actually gotten very good at like now managing how that thing is delivered. So now you kind of like keep the strength, but you've gotten rid of like, how the flaws of the communication channel. So I think, yeah, that's been pretty impressive. And yeah, I think it has come primarily because like he tried improving it and not just like accidentally.
Is my mic working?
Yes, it was.
It's all ChatGPT. I just go there and to tell you the answer to that.
So let me take you back 10 years ago, right, when you were here at CMU. If you were to look back at these years And if I were to ask you what one or two important things that you feel you've learned during these 4 years that have enabled you to become what you are today?
I think part of it is like what you see on this wall. We literally have the picture of this wall, the other side of it, on our culture website. Like literally our company culture is called "My Heart Is in the Work," right? So that kind of work ethic is probably the biggest thing that I have taken from that. The other thing I would put is, and I think this is uniquely true for Carnegie Mellon Qatar. If I was on main campus, I don't know if this would be true, is being okay in walking into a room and expecting that person to help, right? Like asking for help from people. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but I've never taken a course with you, right? And you have made a significant impact in our...
I've noticed.
And you have made a significant impact in our journey. Professor Alex Cheek was here. I never took a design course, right? And he helped me learn a lot. So I think this for me, these two were the big things. It's just pure work ethic. Like we don't do work because it's your job or because you want to make money or any of those kind of things. You do work because your heart is in it. And then being okay in asking for help and expecting it, right? And when you build this feedback loop, especially on this campus where people are, we have had professors who have spent until 9 p.m. with me, just brainstorming different ideas, nothing to do with the coursework, none of that stuff. It built that skill that today I can go to a VC in a Sequoia Capital and have the same attitude towards talking to them and not feeling afraid about using their time that way. So for me, I would say those are the two things that I have taken away. Of course, other than the courses and all of that, but I think in terms of soft skills, those things is what I carry with me.
Musab?
So I think my class, I think class of 2017, a lot of my peers were significantly better than I was. And obviously when you are in school, there's a very high likelihood most of what Carnegie Mellon admits is top X% of that school. So you walk in with this idea that you've known your whole life being in the top 5% of your class. Suddenly you walk into CMU and you are no longer necessarily top 5%. And I think especially within my class of 2017, there were multiple people that would not only get better outcomes, but would get it with much less effort than I would have to put in. And I think that has been a very strong North Star for me when it comes to recruitment, which is effectively a very important skill to build a company now, which is how do you find those people? And if you can't necessarily find them, you can find people with enough potential so that they can grow into those people. But I think just having people that have sheer raw horsepower that they can leverage in whatever problem space that they are currently working on, that standard setting was it has actually not shaken since then. I have seen probably some of the smartest people in CMU Qatar that I have ever come across, and we spent a significant amount of time in the Bay Area, we spent a significant amount of time in the main campus. But I think that in my head has been the biggest thing. And what I kind of as a consequence learned from that was how do I kind of keep up? And like I said, these hacks of creating external environment, potentially pushing myself a lot more. But all of that happened because this environment kind of induces this insane work ethic, a very, very high standard for what good looks like. But yeah, I think that's probably the best. Obviously, I think professors and everybody helped, but the peers around is a very serious thing for me.
Ruxar?
So the first things that we said was definitely something I was going to say. But the other thing I would say is that I think it really made me comfortable facing hard problems. So taking algorithms with Professor Christos and systems and networks and ML, and they changed the curriculum when we took ML, and it was, oh my God, just nightmare. So, but we pushed through it. And we moved out of the course, and we passed through it successfully. And at that time, that seemed so hard, right? And compared to the challenges today, that was nothing. That was actually fun to do. So I think it really shifted my mindset. Going through those courses really made me kind of push myself. That I have to obviously pass the course, so I have to push myself to solve these hard problems. And it was particularly hard, at least personally for me. Like these courses were really tough for me. Like I had to really push myself to like learn and absorb these concepts to kind of like pass through them. And I think that is what has kind of like instilled in me as I'm doing this, is that no matter how hard the problem is, we can figure it out, right? Like that attitude of like, it's going to be okay. I'm going to figure out this problem, I think is like very inherent to me now. And that was like instilled in me at the 4 years here. So, yeah.
Thank you. So I mentioned in my opening that it takes a village. And obviously CMU-Q has supported you. We're very proud of you. We're very proud of the work that you've done. We're very proud of the help we've given you. But after you graduated, you've also had support and help from other organizations in Qatar, QSTP, financials and other support. Whether it's QSTP, QDB's Fikra competition. I know we've gone through all of this together. How important were these initiatives to you in helping you launch Stellic?
I think like majority of our success or our journey is completely owed to all of that, right? Like, I mean, all of us are immigrants. I came as an international student here from Pakistan, and I don't think any of our journey would have been at all happened. Like even like these tiny things. I was just remembering Professor Khalid Haras is there. I went to his office and I said, I'm dropping out computer science. This is not what I want to do. Right? And if he hadn't spent like 3 hours with me telling me like, no, this is the right thing for you, I may have dropped it, and would be a different path of that journey. And same thing with the seed of believing that you can be in Bay Area and build a world-class thing actually was through the trip that you did organize. So Professor Mahir took like 25, 30 students, I believe, to Silicon Valley, and we met the founders of amazing startups, including WhatsApp, like a couple of weeks after the acquisition. So for me, I think those impact is as important as the financial piece, because I think like it's so much easier for us to sit here and say like, go for the startup, like do it right away. Well, how do you do that when you don't have money, or in this case, like even like visa status to be here? Those things got enabled through these programs. Like Fadil, it was so nice to meet him here. Like he ran around and make sure our visas are secured. You have the QSTP program gave us the funding. It was supposed to be only for 3 months, but because we were frugal, we made it last for a whole year, and that's how we got to Bay Area. So a lot of the things that like all of these programs absolutely helped us. If you take them out, we could have all kind of dreams and visions, but they couldn't become a reality, in my opinion. So yeah, I truly owe a lot to these kind of programs that helped us be here.
Anything you guys want to add?
I mean, I can add a small thing. Like I was just telling this to Sabi outside that like there are so many things Qatar does that are like you just take for granted at that point. So I was joking with Sabi right outside saying like the QSTP office that we had, we just happened to have like 2 very nice looking QSTP offices. And when we first hired engineers, the size of our office that we were funding for ourselves was effectively like, it was basically an alley where you would have to like move people out in file because you could not walk behind the other person. Like that's how thin the thing was, and everybody would face the wall. And the next office was basically like half the size of this stage. And then the next office actually got to like something reasonable. And I think our QSTP office on day 0 effectively was like this nice, fancy, world-class space. And we were like 4 people just like coding in it and taking everything for granted. And I think all these things like now, upon reflection, feel like that didn't make any sense. But yeah, it's like incredibly grateful to have it. And it would be nice if like, people here can actually realize while it's happening versus I can only reflect that happened.
Actually, so the other thing, by the way, which we only realize because when we go to US, we see how much student debt you had to pay in the financial aid system, how broken that is. Not only like QF funded that, when we graduated, they said like, I think it's working. If you keep working on your own startup within QSTP, it will count as if you are paying back the loan to the Qatar Foundation. I mean, this is like crazy things. that happened, and we were so lucky to be able to like leverage these kind of benefits, and just like no stress of worrying about how do you pay back the money and those kind of things. Just focus on the work. It really provided us an environment for us to do these kind of things and not worry about a tiny alleyway office space or anything like that.
And it was true for all three of us. I think like we had significant amount of financial aid, all effectively like forgone over the couple of years.
Exactly, for sure.
You want to add anything, Rukhsar? Or?
I was going to say that I think personally for me, the element of like having professors in here who were like world class, I think really helped me kind of like think big. Like I remember realizing in my third year how big Kamal Flazer was. Like looking at his profile on it, I was like, holy shit, this guy teaches me, you know? And I remember that moment because I was like, wow, I should be so thankful. And like, I'm so privileged that I have like amazing professors who are so esteemed and who are like teaching me. And I think that made me think that I can think big. I can kind of do things which I can't imagine today, right? Because they have done it. And now they are teaching me those things. So I think like this fusion of like having small classrooms like the Qatar campus and having that access to like world-class professors, I think that combination, because we spent a semester in Pittsburgh, and while that was amazing, I think I missed my small classrooms and being here and having access to those professors. So apart from all what they talked about Qatar Foundation, I think that element, the students who are listening, please don't take it for granted because it doesn't happen very often that you get so close access to amazing professors.
Can I just share one?
Of course.
One quick story on this. And this is like more just for learning for the students. Like when we started the project, because again, like we can just ask for help. Like that's something that we learned. So I asked all the academic advisors here to come and respond to our idea. So we showed them prototype, we showed them all these kind of things, and there were like 15, 20 people in that room. And we got amazing feedback. Some was like, oh, this is perfect, this can be improved. Great feedback. And we didn't have anything to pay back. This is after graduation, they are just doing us a favor. Rukhsar's mom made biryani as a return to pay back for that. The one thing I do want to share on that is like in that room, I think everyone except like one person was like huge champion of this. Please go and do that. Make it happen, right? And one person was saying like, this is like dumb idea. Don't do that. Don't spend time working on this thing. This is not going to go anywhere. All of those kind of things, right? And I think it was our call to, like, it's easier to focus on like somebody who is like, a skeptic than to listen to an overwhelming majority who wants you to keep going in that particular idea. Right? And I think that is something that I just want to share with folks. Like when you talk about like, here's an idea I have, it's not like just look at the one negative voice, but rather look at the holistic picture and then make a judgment whether your direction makes sense or not. Like, I'll tell you, Professor, like the kind of help, I see Hassan sitting here. He works in IT. There is no reason for a student to talk to him at all. Somebody told me like, you have a single sign-on problems. Hassan is the guy to talk to. I go to him and I say like, I need help with this thing. And he explains what is a single sign-on to us, that we didn't even know what it means. And we built on top of that. So I would say like, just as a suggestion, like seek out people who want to help you, right? And understand a holistic picture of like where you want to go and not get like too bogged down with like people who are skeptic about certain things, because I think CMU-Q really helped us in finding those people who helped us so much in our journey.
I have to tell you, I usually have the opposite problem. 9 out of 10 people tell me it's a dumb idea, so I should be happy with that, you're saying. I have one more question for you, Sabih, but I think we have 2 microphones on the side, so we're going to take a few questions from the audience. So if you've got a question, please step up to the mics, one on the right and one on the left. And I think we have time to take maybe 3 or 4 questions after this panel. But Sabih, today, I won't say you're in the path to success. You are already a successful company. You've got 100 clients. You've got 100 so employees. You're not burning cash, despite all the push from the board for you to spend more money. You're not spending money, but you're growing nicely. I think it's safe to say you have made it. You're successful. Where do you go from here? What's next for you and for Stellic?
That's a great question, and that's something I spent quite a bit of time thinking about it. I think there's two pieces that for me that I think about. One, what is the vision? Why are we doing what we are doing? And second, what are the unique advantages that we have as a company? And I think that's how we think about what's next for us, right? So our vision, as I mentioned earlier, is to transform student lives. Actually, we have a specific goal. We have a goal of transforming 10 million lives by 2030. And we crossed 1 million students 5 months ago. So we have 10x more to achieve in the next 4 years or so. So that I think is going to be true. So as we think about what are the products and what are the innovation, what are the different areas we can go, it will all be from that lens. So in terms of the strengths or the unique advantages we have, we are very fortunate to work with some of the world's top universities, right? From Princeton to UChicago to UNSW in Sydney, all these top schools across the world use the platform. So that gives us a lot of credibility and power, to talk to any school and say, hey, look at all these universities who are choosing this, and you can go in and have an influence on changing their policies and things like that. Sometimes universities will say no, this is what we have been doing for the past 50 years. And you say, but here are the top universities who are doing differently, and here's why. And then you can actually influence change. It's no longer just a software implementation. We have become a change agent on a lot of campuses that way. So I think that's a strength. Our financial independence is definitely a strength, so we can choose our own pathway, not worry about our burn rate or all those kind of things. So I think those are some of the things, and we are now thinking about going into more on the continuing the journey of a student. So if you think about Stellic today, it helps you plan your degree from the day you get admitted all the way towards getting certified for graduation. The two areas we are now thinking about is on both directions. So we are thinking the decision to choose which school to go to itself is a big decision, and that kind of builds the foundation and everything else. The major you choose. And sometimes that happens before you even join. So we have just recently launched a new product line called Explore. And it helps students figure out whether they should even be coming to that campus or not. And especially for transfer students, seeing how long their journey will be on their side. And our next phase is going to be on the other side of it and thinking, now that you are graduated, so what? We have this 4 years of pathways built out. We understand what courses they took. We understand how the journey went. Can we leverage that to connect them to the right employers that way? Can we think about LinkedIn without you building your LinkedIn? Because we have your 4-year journey around it. And so those are the two areas we are thinking about, because I do think that's where students can, you make really important decisions which could make a difference in their lives. And so those are the areas that we are planning to go.
How would AI play a role as a technology in your product vision?
Transformative, absolutely transformative. I think that the piece to understand is I think of AI as a toolkit, not a solution, right? Because I've been on campuses where they say the president has told us buy AI, right? And I think that to me is backwards thinking. It's better to think about let's understand what our LLMs can do, what can generative systems can do, and then when you see the next problem statement, ask yourself how to solve it. I'll give an example of that. One of the biggest steps in implementation of Stellic is building the requirements, because that's what feeds everything else, right? Traditionally, those requirements are built by a person, it's literally coding HTML to some extent. I mean, we have a drag and drop interface, but it's still a manual effort. Even though the requirements do exist on PDFs and catalogs in a natural text available. So we have been experimenting of what if we can just build the first draft for the advisor or someone to review and significantly cut down the time. Right. The other area is students, even if you can give them 10 different support services in Stellic, they don't even know what support they need. I didn't know there was a concept of counselor, starting off. So that's another area where you can ask a question in an unstructured way. We can do the structure part for them. So I think those are the two areas that we are exploring more now on how AI can be used. I truly think it can be transformative as a product. Also on the internal side, by the way, on our employee side, we use it quite a bit now on improving our own internal processes, but those are the two examples which are more like university facing.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll open it up now to the audience for questions. If you have any question, step up to the microphone or maybe raise your hand. We'll get the microphone to you. Students, be brave. Is your team here, by the way? Did they arrive?
Yes.
Okay. So we've got... you have a question. Okay, good. Go ahead.
Hi, guys. Thank you for coming. So my question is, since all of you seem like your background is more into computer science and engineering, things like that, how is your fundraising journey? Because I know that's like pretty tough for many founders. So can you give us a little bit of insight about like how you're able to navigate that coming from sort of a non-finance background?
I mean, I think thanks to quite a bit of like nerdy people raising a lot of money and being successful, that is no longer a criteria for fundraise in the space. So it's when you think about fundraising, there's different rounds. There's seed round, Series A, Series B, Series C, and so on and so forth. What people look for is very different, and what skills you need to close that is also very different. So if you think about like your seed round or even Series A round, financials are the least important thing somebody cares about, right? So the three things they will look for, typically what I have seen, is the team. Is it a team I want to back, basically? Is it a disruptive idea? Like we know 99% chance it's not going to work, but if it's going to work, is it going to disrupt the space? And do I believe in that disruption as a thing? And the third thing they look for is, most of people is, if they win, can others win too, or they can create a moat around them, right? So those are the three things that people typically look at, like market, defensibility, and team in the first round. I built up something like, in like 2 hours on a spreadsheet, and they were like, yeah, whatever. Like, it doesn't really matter, right? Now, when you go to Series B, it becomes a very different game, but by that time, you can afford to have a finance person on your team, right? So you don't have to solve all your skills on your own. You can build a team around it that will solve that. And the core passion and the skill and drive you need, you do have it for the seed round anyways to drive that. So I wouldn't worry too much about the finance side of it.
Thank you.
Also, just like in case you were asking if you want to like get initial funding, like one thing that worked out very well for us was like, because CMU produces like really solid talent, so if you kind of like tap into alumni networks from like, let's say 20, 30 years ago, a lot of them have done significantly well somewhere in the Bay Area and would be happy to meet, happy to give you advice, and in a lot of cases, it's like a decent chunk of like, their personal cash to get you off the ground. I think we have multiple CMU alumni that were either introduced directly by professors of CMU or the alumni then in turn introduced like other people. So at least that's a very easy route you can kind of like tap into.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ruxar, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I was going to say there's a CMU SWATS Center for Entrepreneurship, which actually does funding for CMU people, right? So if you want like initial funding, you should apply. They have like multiple programs. So yeah.
Other questions? Okay, we'll take a couple more.
I wanted to ask you about the startup. So with bringing an idea to life, it's kind of difficult. Apart from the financials, when trying to sell the idea, what were the steps taken to handle the struggles of, you mentioned that you had an issue with like 9 people accepting the idea and then there was one that was kind of skeptical about it. So how was it that you handled it? And the steps taken to kind of overcome those, those skeptical ideas?
So that's what I was saying earlier, like the startup journey is like, the true startup journey is much, much, much harder than I initially expected it to be. I was just thinking like late night hackathons. That's all, right? And like everything will just like fall in place. It's a lot more complex than that. The first thing I would say is like this: expect your emotions to go up and down on a whole different level, right? So I'll tell you like these 2 events. We were part of an accelerator program, and at that accelerator, Accelerator program is like, where you learn, startups learn how to sell, how to do startups, those kind of things. So we presented on the stage, and TechCrunch was there. Sequoia was there. Menlo was there. All huge, like top-tier VCs were there. I walk out of the stage, and I'm getting all these pings from all these like top investors who want to talk to us, right? And then we go home, and we find out that TechCrunch says top 5 startups identified at the event, and Stellic was one of them, right? It's like, holy shit, you get you get noticed by like TechCrunch and all these top investors. So you're like on cloud 9. You're feeling like I've made it, right? We are settled now. A week later, all of those investors said no, right? And I think, and it's, by the way, it's one thing to not have any investors talk to us, which is easier. It's harder to talk to 74 investors just to hear that you are not like ready to do something about it, right? I remember like coming out of one of our investors meeting and sitting on a floor and thinking like, this is it, and so first, like I just, like the biggest learning I wanted to have at that time is how to be emotionally strong, not get too high when things are amazing, and also not feel defeated when things are bad, right? But purely from a tactical standpoint, I think the piece that matters here is like if you have the right North Star, it continues, right? I have seen founders who were doing it because they thought it was an easy way to make money. And sometimes it honestly is, especially when you have this like bubbles of like AI and crypto and all those kind of things. So that's true. It's also easy to give up because you don't really have a true core purpose to do what you are doing, all right? So if you have the right purpose, if you have the right emotional strength, you just deal with it, right? And you learn. I did not know any of the skills that today I have to use, like 90%. I'm not coding, which is unfortunate, but I'm not coding anymore, right? So over time, I have to learn the skills that I didn't have. I just had the, I guess like refuse to lose attitude, in solving that. So I think that's something that you have to like develop, and over time, like learn those things. I will say though, like something, if I can go back in time and think about like when I was still a student, one skill that I wish I had spent more time learning upfront is how to be a salesperson. We think of sales as something to selling a product or selling like insurance or whatever, but actually you are selling yourself every day, either to your manager or to an investor or to a candidate, to an employee who you want to hire, right? So you're constantly selling. And the skill of sales is, I think, something that we had to learn the hard way. Personally, I believe the exact same principles apply when I go to a customer and sell, and the same skills apply to an investor, and same skill applies to an employee. So I would say, like, spend time learning that, even though, like, as a CS major or IS major or bio major, it seems like, oh, that's a business major job. But I think it's a life skill to know how to sell well in that way. If you're interested, by the way, I will just suggest one book that has been, like, very helpful for me. There's a book called, like, You Can't Teach a Kid How to Ride a Bike at a Seminar. It's a very long name for the book. It's by David Sandler. And that book was like very revolutionary for me in understanding the core principles of sales that now I apply in our life. So,
guys, that was such a pleasure. Thank you all for coming. I'd like to invite Dudley, Professor Dudley, to the stage to. I think there's a gift that he'd like to give you, and then a photo op, and then we'll close.
So it is a tradition as part of the Dean's lecture and Dean's panel that we have a small token from Carnegie Mellon that we share with our guests. And so it's a real pleasure to share it with not only our guests, but our alumni today. And so if you indulge me in a photo op with our three superstars here today.